we got a lot to get to. 49ers and Titans go on Sunday. And Chase, there's no way the Niners could lose this game, right? I mean, the 49ers are going to win this game, and they're going to win this game big, are they not? Or is there anything to fear?
Nothing to fear for me. I think the 49ers are going to win this game. I think you look at the odds makers, and they have San Francisco as sizable 13.5-point favorite. San Francisco's coming off the bye. They're playing really good football right now in all three phases. They're feeling rested up. And this Titans team is really, really bad. They've already fired their head coach. Statistically, one of the worst offenses in the NFL, right there with the Las Vegas Raiders. And on defense, they have some good players. Jeffrey Simmons, one of them. He's one of the best players in all of football. But they're very bereft of overall roster talent. Mike McCoy is their interim head coach. He was a disaster of a coach for the Los Angeles Chargers several years ago. Kind of got his career going thanks to Peyton Manning, but I just don't see or envision a scenario in which the Niners lose this game. I just think that they're playing too well right now. There's too much on the line. Plus, they come in with a massive rest advantage coming off the bye week against one of the worst teams in the NFL.
What is the game outside of Niners, Tennessee this week that you're going to have your eye on? There's some good ones. I mean, Browns, Bears, I think is a hell of a game. Chargers, Chiefs is a hell of a game. Bills, Patriots is going to be a hell of a game. The Eagles will be at home against the Raiders. That should be just quick work, I would imagine. But we got Packers, Broncos in the afternoon window. Lions, Rams in the afternoon window. There's some good ones. Colts, Seahawks in Seattle. Vikings, Cowboys, Sunday Night Football. There's some good matchups this weekend.
Great matchups. Yeah, the ones that I'm really pinpointing for sure, Lions with the 10-day rest advantage going up against the Rams. Obviously, Detroit is on the outside looking in of the wild card playoff hunt right now, but I think they're a really good team when they're playing their best football. Obviously, they're dealing with so many injuries once again, and Dan Campbell has taken over as the offensive play caller, but that was an impressive win over the Dallas Cowboys 2 Thursdays ago against a Dallas team, which I thought at the time, with the Rams having lost to Carolina on the road as 10-point favorites, was the hottest team in the NFC. I really want to see how Green Bay fares against Denver. Those are two teams that I find them difficult to gauge. The Broncos defense, I think, is the second best in the NFL behind Houston's. D'Amico Ryans has those boys playing really well, but Denver doesn't force as many turnovers as Houston does, but they could set the sack record, which has been in place since, I believe, the 1985 Bears. And so you have that from Denver. Their offense has been spotty all year. I never know what to expect from Bo Nix, but they pull out these games late. And then for Green Bay, they're such a hot and cold team where when they're playing their best football, they look like a team that could compete for a Super Bowl, but they're favorites on the road in Mile High. And so I think for Denver in the AFC, Green Bay in the NFC, I want to see how both of those clubs manage that type of game. Chicago coming off a loss against Green Bay, going up against Cleveland. Obviously, there's a lot of Shedeur Sanders hype there, but that Browns defense is legit, and this Browns game is sandwiched between Packers and Lambeau for Chicago, and then the Packers again at Soldier Field. And the weather in that Cleveland-Chicago game might be the coldest game on record at Soldier Field. And then another game with a lot of implications is the one that's happening in the Pacific Northwest. Is Phillip Rivers, 44 years old, who hasn't played since 2020, going to start against the Seattle Seahawks? I'm just fascinated to see that. Is he going to come out of that game alive against that Seahawks defense? So those are the games that I'm looking forward to here on the Week 15 slate.
Well, let's talk about Rivers for a second. It got so many headlines. Do you think that Rivers is going to play? I mean, is he here just in case, or is he going to play over Riley Leonard? Because if he's going to play over Riley Leonard, wouldn't he play this week? And then I just think it's going to, I agree with Steve Young. It's courageous, but I think it ends in him, with something really bad, like some kind of bad injury. I just think that, this is a young man's game. You can't be 44. You can't be 5 years out. I mean, this is not that kind of a job. I think he's going to get seriously hurt, blow an Achilles, tear a knee. I don't think there's any way around that. I think there's the high. I mean, if Philip Rivers steps into an NFL game and plays well and can do it for multiple weeks, I would be absolutely shocked.
Yeah. Well, obviously, this is big news, too, because the 49ers have to travel to play the Colts on
Right.
Monday Night Football next week in Week 16. And so we were talking about this inside the office, which we like to call the bullpen because everybody's kind of there. And we have all types of great conversations that go back and forth, whether it's sports related or not. And somebody made a really good point. Would Philip Rivers come out of retirement at 44, having not played since 2020, if he wasn't going to play? He's coming out of retirement to play. I know that he trains Riley Leonard in the offseason, but I don't think that he would put his body through this. I don't think that he would go through this, fly to Indy, do a workout, sign the next day. Then he's addressing the media in Colts gear if he wasn't going to play. I think that the competitive nature in him, and we know that Philip Rivers is one of the more competitive SOBs that we've seen at the quarterback position play, is telling him, Philip, you're playing in this game, and you're going to prove to everybody that you can still play. It's crazy to me for a couple of reasons, right? 44 years old, hasn't played since 2020. He's older than his head coach. He's older than his offensive coordinator. He's a grandfather, and he has so many kids that he could almost field a football team. And he's coming out here to try to save the Colts season. This goes to show you how desperate they are after the Daniel Jones injury. But the other thing, too, is that Riley Leonard's dealing with a knee injury. And so I don't know if the Colts think that knee is in a spot where he can play. And now they're going the route of Philip Rivers, which I cannot wait to watch. And I do think that he has the smarts to at least survive out there. But this Seahawks defense is ferocious. They're really good. They're aggressive. They're not going to hold anything back. Philip is going to try to dink and dunk, but then the Seahawks are going to adjust. Is he going to be able to make plays downfield? When he gets hit, is he going to be able to get up? I saw him do an interview with Dan Patrick. I'm not sure when it was. And DP was like, do you think that you could play in a game? And Philip was like, oh, yeah, I could definitely play. Now, will I be able to walk the next day? I'm not sure. We'll see. But this is one of the more fascinating storylines that I can remember in recent NFL history.
If you're the 49ers, would you rather face Philip Rivers or Riley Leonard?
I'd rather face Philip Rivers because Riley Leonard, while I don't love his ability to throw the ball, he's a really talented runner. And so I'd rather go against Philip Rivers because you have a weak pass rush, you're dead last in sacks, you're dead last in pressure rate. I think you're second to last in pressures, but your pass rush might be able to get home against Philip Rivers because he's not moving back there.
I want Philip Rivers too. I think he's especially if he plays this week against Seattle. Oh, I would love to see Philip Rivers next week after he played this week. I mean, it would just be epic. And if I'm Cleve Farrell or Keon White, I'd be like, hey man, we're gonna bolster our sack total against Philip Rivers. I know he'll get rid of the ball, but I just think this is going to be a rude awakening for Philip Rivers. Can
you imagine going from coaching high school football to getting walloped by Alfred Collins, who's 6'6", 330?
No, I cannot.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's a bad decision. And I just think that, if he should know better. He should know what it takes to play quarterback in the NFL and that you can't sit out. Heck, I mean, if we skip 3 streams in a row, I'm like, what button do I press? This guy's going to miss 5 years and step into the NFL against much younger guys in a physically demanding endeavor. And he's not even going to do it in training camp. He's going to wait till they're in full froth and full flight in December when everybody's in total rhythm. I don't care if this guy played last year. This would be a stretch. The fact he hasn't played since 2020 just makes it comical. All right. We titled this stream, Can Brock Purdy Lead the 49ers Through the Playoffs? And I'm looking at the playoff picture in the NFC, and you're the perfect person to talk to about this. I see Stafford, but then I see Brock Purdy. And everybody else I don't really believe in. Let's talk about Hurts. The question came up at the presser this week. Would you consider replacing Hurts? And Sirianni was like, I think that's a ridiculous question. And he wouldn't address it even. But it's, a ridiculous question today is a pertinent question next week. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it may be a tad premature. I don't know if it was a ridiculous question. It may have been a little premature, but I do believe, and I'm on record as saying that at some point, Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, is going to get hurt. Tanner McKee is going to come in, and Tanner McKee is going to take that job away from him because I don't think Jalen Hurts, even though he won the Super Bowl and is Super Bowl MVP, I don't think he's just like he's not a Mahomes, he's not an Allen, he's not that kind of a player. But what do you think? I mean, where are the Eagles right now? Where with Hurts? I mean, this is to say it's a distraction. I mean, it's got to be somewhat of a distraction. The question is only being asked because Hurts has struggled and played poorly at times. What do you make of Hurts and when you look at Purdy and the rest of the quarterbacks in the NFC? I've got a buddy who believes that the better quarterback always wins in the playoffs. I could see Purdy winning some playoff games in the NFC playoffs because I think outside of Stafford, he might be the best quarterback.
Yeah, well, the crazy thing is that Hurts in that playoff run last year, by that logic, took down Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford, Jaden Daniels, and Patrick Mahomes. And so the issue with Hurts is that he's become such a hot and cold player throughout his career. But I think a big reason for that not a lot of people talk about is that he's had a different offensive coordinator literally for like 10 straight seasons, if you go back to his time at Alabama. And I do think that continuity at the offensive coordinator spot really matters. Tom Brady had Josh McDaniels for a long time. Peyton Manning had his guys. Brock Purdy's had Kyle Shanahan. Patrick Mahomes has had Andy Reid for his entire NFL career. And it is odd to me that Jalen Hurts has become such a polarizing and hated player. I think it's just the fact that he plays for the Eagles, and a lot of people don't like Eagles fans or that organization because they've won 2 Super Bowls since 2017. But normally this is a guy who you root for, right? He's a coach's son, cool, calm, and collected, clutch, big-time performer. He's never gotten in trouble, model franchise player, face of the team. And he's won on the biggest of stages. He was an MVP runner-up in 2022. Never does anything or says anything that's controversial, yet people just like to rail against him for really just toxic ways and at toxic lengths, right? But the issue with Hurts, I think he's earned equity, right? I mean, this is a guy who's come in since 2021. He's made the playoffs every single year that he's been a starter. He's won double-digit games in 2022, 2023, 2024, and he's on pace for winning double-digit games again if the Eagles can win 2 of their last 4. And he's won Super Bowl MVP. He's outplayed Patrick Mahomes in 2 Super Bowls, and he's shown at times that he can be a high-level player. Now, there's no doubt that right now, I think he's playing some of the worst football of his career, but I think the offensive coordinator stinks. From a play design, play calling, play sequencing, play calling feel standpoint, he's just not in. He's not elevating the quarterback right now, but obviously Hurts is to blame too. But over his last 5 games, he's completing 57.5%. He's usually a 64 completion rate guy. He's thrown 5 interceptions. He's fumbled 3 times in those last 5 games, but he's 54-25 as a starter. He's made it to 2 Super Bowls over the last 3 years. But I just think this Eagles offense right now, everything is off. Play calling, the offensive coordinator, the quarterback, the offensive line has been awful. I mean, they've really regressed. That's led to Saquon Barkley not being as good. You have wide receivers who either are unhappy or aren't producing as much. But to your point, like you look at the NFC right now, and this has kind of been my take over the last couple of weeks, it's as wide open as it's been in a really long time. Any team can win it. And if you get into the playoffs, this is why I was clamoring for the Niners to make a move at the deadline, because I had a sense that it was going to be wide open. And if you get into the dance with this coaching staff, Larry, Kyle Shanahan calling the offense, Robert Saleh calling the defense, Brant Boyer calling the special teams unit, you can win any game. And I would put the Niners coaching staff up against any coaching staff across the league. And I don't think there's a great team out there. You can make the argument the Rams and the Seahawks are the 2 most dangerous, 2 best teams in the NFC. The Niners have beat them both. I would like San Francisco to go on the road and beat a Green Bay or beat Green Bay at home. Against Chicago, we'll get to see that the second to last week of the season. I like how the Niners could potentially stack up against Chicago if they can stop the run, because Caleb Williams is completing under 60% of his passes. And so if this Niners team is playing its best, if Brock Purdy's playing well and not turning the ball over, and they can force turnovers on defense and the offense can carry, this team can win a couple of playoff games. No doubt about it.
If you were in a casino and you had to bet on the Eagles or the Niners to go to the Super Bowl, who would you rather put your $100 on?
Well, this is obviously big too during this conversation, because right now the Eagles are the 3 seed, the Niners are the 6 seed. If the season were to end today,
they're playing in Philly.
Yeah, we would get the Niners on the road playing in Philly. And I put out a video this week.
I'm there, by the way. I'm going to that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I love that. I would pick the Niners to win. Here's why. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan against Vic Fangio would be an incredible matchup. The Eagles defense is a top 5 unit in the league. And so get your popcorn ready for that, because that would be a really fun X's and O's chess match between Shanahan and Fangio. But I think Robert Saleh would be able to pants Kevin Patullo. I just think that he's so much of a better coordinator compared to him, and a better play caller than Patullo. You have this Niners team, which is riding high right now. They've won 3 games in a row. They're feeling confident. They're on fire. Whereas the Eagles have lost 3 games in a row. They're lacking confidence, and they're kind of falling apart at the seams right now. And I think it would be close, just because of the big game experience for Philly, how much talent they have, and how good their defense is. But I do think that over the course of a 60-minute ball game, Kyle Shanahan would be able to devise some big plays on offense. The Niners defense would be able to play well, although they're short-handed from a talent and depth standpoint against this Eagles offense. And I think that San Francisco would be able to win that playoff game, and they'd be able to advance. I do believe that.
We talked to Kubiak yesterday, and I thought he made an interesting point. I mean, you look at that Niner win over the Browns, 26-8, and if you looked at Brock's stats, they weren't great, right? He threw for the least amount of passing yards in a game this year, 168. He had his lowest completion percentage. He completed only 55.2%. He had his lowest yards per attempt, 5.8. He wasn't driving the ball down the field, but he took care of the football. And Kubiak said, I think one of the questions came up yesterday in the presser was, hey, was that part of the game plan, throw the ball away? And he said, well, it wasn't necessarily throw the ball away per se, but it was like, hey, look, we can't hitch, that extra hitch against this D-line. We can't hold the ball. We have to get rid of the ball. So Brock was a little bit sped up in his decision-making, and if it wasn't there, he was looking to throw it away and avoid the negative play. I think in the process, you saw, I think they, I don't know if they realize it, but I feel like they discovered a template of how they can win. Brock Purdy struggles at times. He's had 3 two turnover games already this year, 5 starts. Mm-hmm. He struggles with multi-turnover games. When they lose, and they lose famously, it seems like Brock Purdy turnovers are always a part of it. If all he does, why is Stafford an MVP this year where he's just been a really explosive quarterback in the past? He's minimizing his interceptions. He's throwing the ball into the ground. I just feel like Brock Purdy makes big plays, but he also makes negative plays by turning it over. If he can, get his clock to the point where he's throwing the ball away, going to the next down, minimizing the negative plays, avoiding the turnovers, they got a shot. They got a real shot because they got a great coaching staff. All 3 levels are starting to kind of click. And they've got a lot of guys in the room that feel like they should have already won a Super Bowl by now. And every game that goes further, if they continue taking care of the football, they can't turn it over because they don't take the ball away that much. But now they're actually taking care of the football and taking it away. And to me, it's a really incredible combination. I found something last week with Purdy. What do you think? Is Purdy going to be able to take care of the ball going forward in December, in January, potentially on the road against the best teams in the conference?
Here's the formula of success for me for the 49ers to mess around and win a couple of playoff games, which speaks volumes of the job that Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh, and Brant Boyer have been able to do. I think on offense, they're going to have to carry this team because the defense is so bereft of talent. They don't have a lot of depth, and there isn't a lot of margin for error on defense, especially when you lose a Nick Bosa and a Fred Warner, right? And so on offense, this 49ers team really has to shoulder the load, and they have to be understanding that the defense might give up some long drives. They might give up some points from time to time. But if the defense can generate some turnovers, that'll do this team wonders. If the offense can play clean, and as they get healthier, they've been very efficient over the last couple of games. Outside of the Brock Purdy 3-pick first half against Carolina, I think that's like the formula of success for the Niners to go on a run here, upset a couple of teams, and win a couple of playoff games. It's that the offense has to carry. They've got to play clean. This defense, you have to know they're going to have some bumps along the road. There are going to be some learning curves here, but they've steadily improved over the last couple of games. And if they can generate turnovers while you play clean on offense, there just isn't a lot of margin for error for this team right now, which is what happens when you suffer from all these injuries. But if the Niners, who have been disciplined all year, continue to be disciplined, they're going to take any of these games down to the wire. And I think that they can compete with anybody. But if the defense has lapses, if the offense turns it over, and you're giving additional drives to the opponent, you're just shooting yourselves in the foot. And the Niners can afford to do that because of their lack of talent with all of the injuries that they've suffered.
I want to share the screen and play this real quick. This is a good little soundbite that I heard yesterday, and I want you to react to this. This is off Coach Yak's Twitter. This is Kurt Warner stopped by on the radio yesterday on 95.7 The Game. And he
here in the Bay Area, if there is...
He was asked about Joe Burrow for Brock Purdy. This is kind of interesting.
My mind kind of leans in the direction of this is about a team that has not gotten a defense and an offensive line around its franchise QB. Yeah. So since it's sports radio, we get to let our minds wander a little bit. Here in the Bay Area, if there is this mythical, like Joe Burrow wants out, Kurt, you've had so many great conversations with us about Brock Purdy. If the Bengals, if Joe Burrow wants out, should the Niners be interested?
I mean, yeah, that's a tough question. I love Brock, and I think Brock's really good. But I also do believe Joe's better than Brock is and brings more to the table. And so I think, if that were the case, you probably have 28 teams in the league that say Joe Burrow would be an upgrade at the quarterback spot. Not a knock on any of these other guys. They're really good quarterbacks in this league. It's just Joe's one of the special ones. He's shown that time and again. So, but again, I don't know what all that entails for all these different teams. I don't know what that entails, for Joe to even get out of Cincinnati. I just can't imagine Cincinnati letting him go. I understand if, it was a Carson Palmer and I'm going to retire if you don't trade me type of thing. Okay. But I also think part of, and not that they can't do all of it, but, this offseason, they went and, they signed Jamar Chase and they signed T. Higgins and so they made some moves and some things that Joe wanted from that standpoint. I think it's also hard to get everything that you want in this league. When guys are getting paid so much, you can put so much of it into certain areas and you have to kind of focus on, what you want to do. And,
that's basically this consensus, the sense of it there. We got a good vibe of it because he goes on for another minute. But what do you think? Coach Yak had this on Twitter today about, would you trade Brock Purdy, 2 number ones, and Alfred Collins for Joe Burrow? I believe Brock Purdy can win a Super Bowl, and I'd like to see the 49ers try to win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. I understand, though, why people are saying this, because Joe Burrow did sound despondent the other day at the presser. He didn't sound like a guy who was happy. He sounded like a guy that wanted to move on. He may be getting frustrated with the Bengals. Here's what Coach Yak put out there as far as trade proposal. What do you think? Do you think the Bengals, do you think Burrow at some point is going to say, I'm done with the Bengals, trade me? If he ever crossed that bridge, this would shake up your franchise. Would you shake it up and say, here's Purdy, Alfred Collins, and a couple ones, Joe Burrow, or would you rather try to, you've got a good thing going with Brock Purdy. Keep your first round picks, build up your football team around Brock Purdy. What do you think?
When Joe Burrow's going right, I think you can make the argument he's the best quarterback in football. And some people might take Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen over him. But then, okay, he's a top 3 quarterback. And this isn't to slight Brock Purdy, even though all the Brock Purdy fans are going to get very butthurt in me saying this. But this is what it comes down to. You heard it from Kurt Warner. It's not just my opinion. It's the opinion of every single NFL executive out there. Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. Now, I don't think the Niners are going to be in a spot where they're going to trade Purdy and multiple ones for Joe Burrow, but it's certainly fascinating to talk about and think about because he would elevate your team. Why? Because he's the better player. And when he's healthy, which has not been consistent, he's been hurt a lot, he is exceptional. I mean, when you watch a game like last week between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, you're like, these are the 2 best throwers of the football in the NFL. They're going back and forth, and Burrow was great up until a couple of picks late in that game. He's a sensational player. At LSU, he was incredible. That season that he had in 2019, one of the best team seasons and quarterback seasons that you will see in college football history, en route to winning that national championship. And as an NFL player, he's been great, and he's had to overcome playing for one of the worst organizations in the sport. This, to me, feels very similar to what happened to Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer was a great player for Cincinnati, but because they're historically cheap, they don't spend a lot of money because usually they're bad and they don't have a lot of playoff success. Even when they were going to all those playoffs with Marvin Lewis as their coach, they couldn't win a playoff game. They didn't win a playoff game for a couple of decades up until they made it to the Super Bowl back in 2021. So Joe Burrow has been behind an awful offensive line since he's been there with the Bengals. He's put up great production, but he's also been hurt a ton. The constant state of getting hurt and rehabbing definitely takes a mental toll on you. I would never want to live in Cincinnati, nor would I ever want to play for the Bengals. And so you're seeing that he's going through it right now, and he's certainly feeling it. There are probably 27 to 28 teams who would trade for Joe Burrow and take him over their quarterback. There are probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 who would not. And I think the Niners would know internally, hey, Joe Burrow's a better player than Brock Purdy. I just don't see something like this happening.
Yeah, I don't either, but it is interesting, and it's food for thought. One guy, all this talk about who the Niners should have taken, right? Should have taken this guy, should have taken that guy. And we all, our opinions change as these players play more games, right? When you think of Mikael Williams at 11, I kind of think the Niners got a solid player, but my concern was that there were great players on the board, and I was looking for a great player, and I just didn't feel like they that he was a great player. Who did you want the Niners to take at 11, if you can remember going into that draft? Did you do a video on it? And looking back at it, because I think it's easy to say, well, I didn't want Mikael at the time. I'm going to be completely honest about that. I won't pretend that I did. I just thought I like what he's given him as an inside rusher, but I just thought he was very limited in what he could do as an outside rusher. And I also kind of had the Robert Beal Jr. scarring from having a Georgia defensive end with 4.4 speed who's really doesn't sack the quarterback much. So I was not big on Mikael. But now in hindsight, I think I would probably go with this guy right here, Nick Eman-Warry. Look at where this guy has played. He's played slot corner. He's played in the box. He's played D-line. He's played free safety. He's played corner. He has been, he's a freak of an athlete.
He had a 10 relative athletic score. It was perfect.
Yeah, this guy coming out of South Carolina. Now, I wondered if he was just like an athlete, not a football player. But, man, he has proven that he is an incredible pick. And this guy is just playing his butt off for Mike McDonald right now with the Seahawks. Who did you want at 11? Do you remember? And obviously, Eman-Warry looks like, man, that would have been an awful nice addition, even if you didn't need a safety. I mean, this guy can play corner, he can play linebacker, he can play everywhere. He is big, fast, and he's a big part of why Seattle's defense is just getting better and better and better.
Yeah, he's making plays all over the yard, and he's really a perfect safety for Mike Macdonald's scheme. Mike Macdonald has done such a great job of maximizing safeties, the likes of Kyle Hamilton, and now you're seeing him do it with Nicky Manwari, who is a freak athlete, who in the pre-draft process, when we were in Indy for the NFL Combine, blew everybody away with his athletic testing. I don't think he's a fit for every scheme, but he's a fit for what Macdonald does because he's utilizing his versatility. As far as who I really like for the Niners, there were a couple of players. I really wanted San Francisco to either draft Armand Membu or Walter Nolan. Now, Armand Membu went before the Niners pick came around when they eventually took Mykel Williams. But Armand Membu has had a really good season, and I envision him being a plug-and-play player right out of Mizzou. A little bit shorter for a tackle at 6'3", 314, but I love the footwork. I loved how dominant he was playing at Mizzou in the SEC against some of the top pass rushers. And this year, overall PFF grade, pass blocking grade, run blocking grade, he's top 30 in all of them. And he's only given up one quarterback hit. And the pressure is 31, not great, but he's graded out really well, and I think that he's going to continue to get better. The other player who I really liked for the Niners who was on the board was Walter Nolan, and he did get hurt prior to the year, came back a few games ago, but with what he's shown in limited action, he might already be the best player on that Cardinals defense. He's so disruptive from that defensive tackle spot. Number one overall player at one point coming out of high school, never fully became the star that a lot of people thought he was going to be. And there were some character concerns, but then Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss absolutely loved him in 2024. And I just think that if you can get a star interior defensive lineman who can disrupt the game in a way where he can blow things up like an Aaron Donald, or right now a Jalen Carter, Chris Jones, or Jeffrey Simmons, it's so beneficial to the rest of your defense. And interior defensive linemen who are disruptive like that are really hard to find. A couple other players who I really liked. Jalen Walker, I thought, was the better Georgia pass rusher compared to Mykel Williams, and he has 5.5 sacks. I floated around with James Pierce. I thought that maybe 11 would be a little bit too early. He just set the Falcons record for rookie sacks in a single season. He has 8 now. He got to that number last night by taking down Baker Mayfield. But here's the thing. Jalen Walker and James Pierce are wiry, thinner, smaller, more explosive defensive ends with a lot of bend. The Niners,
they're speed-oriented. They're speed-oriented
players.
Yeah.
And the Niners don't really like those guys. Mykel Williams, Nick Bosa, they like bigger defensive ends. And John Lynch even said in the pre-draft last year, what do you look for when you look for a defensive end? He said, we want somebody who can set the edge. To set the edge, you usually have to be a pretty physical player. Another player who I liked, but I thought it was going to be a little bit of a reach, Mike Green out of Marshall, who again is a smaller speed rusher. He has 2.5 sacks this year. I think it's going to take him a little while because he needs to gain some weight to fully become the best player that he can become. And I'm not saying that Mykel Williams isn't going to be a good player. I think he will be. I just thought it was more of a pick of it being safe as compared to a player who you could have taken who I think had more potential and more ability, who can end up being more dominant. I think Mykel will be a very steady player and productive player, but I also worry about how he comes off of a torn ACL knowing he's not a twitchy guy and he's never been that fast and explosive. He's relied on power. So I wonder how the injury impacts the power.
You know, a lot of people listening to us talk about last year's draft are like, hey, man, that thing's happened. It's dead and buried. And, you know, what about this year's draft? Okay.
Well, they haven't hit on a first-round pick since Brandon Ayuk, so
right,
it's a problem.
No, seriously, no, it's a problem. I mean, and this is the thing. I mean, I love John Lynch as a guy, but you got to hit on these picks, and I really don't. You know, at some point, it just nothing else matters. Is there a player in college this year? We got plenty of time to get to it, but is there a player in college this year that you've seen that you really like? Let me ask you this: You're did you grow up a Penn State fan? Are you an Eagle? Who do you watch in college football?
I definitely grew up on Joe Paterno football when I was a kid, because when you're growing up in Philly, it really isn't a college atmosphere.
Right.
It's more of a pro sports town. And I would imagine San Francisco is like that, although you have Cal and you have Stanford, and back in their heydays, like they were great programs. But for me, I was more pro sports oriented, but every Saturday I was watching Penn State football, and I was a diehard Penn State fan growing up because Joe Paterno was a legendary figure there in Happy Valley.
So who do you watch now? Because I know you're based in Dallas, so you probably force-fed some Texas football. But I mean, do you still watch Penn State every week?
Oh,
yeah. Give me a player in college football that you like for the Niners. I'm going to give you one, and it's a Penn State kid. I love the Penn State defensive tackle, Zane Durant.
Okay.
And he's an undersized defensive tackle, but he's got great speed and he's got great quickness. And to me, I love to see Zane Durant next to Alfred Collins. I mean, Collins is gigantic and huge and can occupy. And then you got this guy who's just gap shooter, kind of reminds me a little bit of like an Aaron Donald. He's a small, fast defensive tackle. Small, quick defensive tackles are kind of more in vogue these days. I kind of like Durant from Penn State.
Yeah, he's a good player. A player who I would love for the Niners, who I think could be an exceptional guard, is Vega Giovanni. He's their right guard, and I don't think he's given up a sack since 2023. He is just a physical, mauling guard who I think could end up being a really, really good player at the next level. Speaking of the Niners really liking big defensive ends, Keldrick Folk, the defensive end out of Auburn, is a massive, massive player. And I think that he is a prototypical 4-3 type of defensive end. And so I like him as well. And then who's Penn State star pass rusher who you mentioned last week?
Danny Sutton or Danny Dennis Sutton. Or...
He is a freak. And a lot of people up there in Happy
fast.
Valley think that like he's the next coming of Abdul Carter, Micah Parsons. He has that type of body type. And both Abdul Carter and Micah Parsons had this off-ball linebacker background. Then they made the transition to pass rusher. Sutton had a background as an outside linebacker, off-ball linebacker, fully developed into a pass rusher, and the athleticism just wows you on tape. I think that he's going to be an excellent player. My previous job prior to Chat Sports, I worked for a television station in Pennsylvania as a reporter, and I covered Penn State football. And so I think they've done as good of a job of developing and recruiting NFL level talent that's very high-end talent among all schools in college football. A big reason for that, obviously, James Franklin, he's no longer there. And after a disastrous coaching search, they hired Matt Campbell, who I think is a great coaching hire. But when I was there, it's just dogs after dogs after dogs who are very NFL caliber players. And so I do trust their player developmental program to churn out some really good pros. So I like a couple of those Penn Staters.
The combination of they recruit well, they coach well, and they train well. So like their strength.
Plus they play physical football, and that translates.
And their strength and conditioning coach is great.
Yep.
They develop their players. Their players are usually strong, very strong players. They get 5 stars. They'll get the best player out of California. They'll get a great player out of New Jersey. They'll get a great player out of Philly, Chicago. I mean, Penn State really does get some premier guys. All right, last thing before we get out of here. Let's talk a little bit for a second before we leave on just bold predictions. You and I only get a chance to stream the week, but I watch your videos. I'm a big fan of Chat Sports. And you have some big opinions. I have some big opinions. And sometimes when we stream, since I'm picking the topic, sometimes we get to our big opinions. Sometimes we don't. Let's go with some bold opinions, maybe 2 or 3. If I say, give me a bold opinion about either a player, a coach, somebody who's going to be fired, a conviction that you have about a team in the playoffs, we're here. It's December 12th. Give me a couple of bold predictions that maybe you would say, man, maybe people wouldn't agree today, but watch, this is going to happen. Or because you have a lot of insight into these teams, and there was a lot of speculation about Mike Tomlin being fired, and And then, that would have been a hot take. And then it sounds like maybe he isn't. I'm kind of thinking that maybe it's time for John Harbaugh to hang it up. I'm kind of wondering what's going on with Lamar Jackson and why is he not playing well? What's going on with Mahomes and why is Mahomes and Kansas City's offense so bad? And is Reed losing his, effectiveness? I mean, there's a lot of hot takes out there. There's a lot of uninformed takes, but I think you're pretty informed. So give me a couple informed, what you would call bold opinions or takes.
I think right now the best team in the AFC and the team that is most dangerous is the team that is the final wild card team, and that's the Houston Texans. If their offense can be a little bit better, their defense is incredible. And I think if you match that defense up, whether they're at home, on the road, and it's looking like right now they might be a road team just because the Jags look as though they're going to win the AFC South, although they do play one more time. I think that defense travels, and I think that they can play in any weather. And so I think Houston is the best team right now in the AFC. Their offense just needs to be a little bit more consistent. And when CJ Stroud is on, like we saw him against the Niners, I do think that they could come out of the AFC and shock a lot of people. I know the sexy pick for a lot of people is Buffalo, but another bold take that I have, there's no way they can win a Super Bowl with this defense. That defense absolutely stinks. And I know that Josh Allen might be the best overall player in football right now, but I just think they're too Josh Allen reliant. And the other thing, he's been spectacular in December and in January in Buffalo. They're not going to win the division because New England is going to win the AFC East, although they do play this weekend in another huge game. We were talking about big games in the NFL slate a little bit earlier. Bills on the road against New England is a big one, and New England won that game in Buffalo earlier this year. I just don't think that Buffalo can win a Super Bowl this year with how they're constructed because their defense can't stop anybody. And over the course of 4 playoff games, which is what it would require to be a wild card team and win a Super Bowl, if you make it there, your offense is not going to be able to score 40 points every single week, which is kind of what I feel as though the Bills would have to do. And it's also really hard to do that in that type of weather. So those are the two teams in the AFC that I have very bold opinions on. In the NFC, I really do not know what to expect. I thought a couple of weeks ago the Rams were the best team in the conference. Then they lose as 10-point favorites on the road against a Carolina team that the Niners dominated despite 3 first-half Brock Purdy interceptions. I really like how Seattle is put together, but the big game demons of Sam Darnold could resurface. And so I just think that this NFC is completely wide open, which is why I think the Niners could end up winning a couple of playoff games if they play their best football. They can't turn it over offensively, and they're going to have to play out of their minds defensively in order to make that happen. But I think that San Francisco can be dangerous just because of how elite their coaching staff is, and they still have a couple of core pieces who have some very high-level playoff experience. If I were to pick a favorite team in the NFC right now, I just don't know who I would pinpoint because you think about it. The Rams could lose at any point. The Packers are the 2 seed. They're so hot and cold. The Eagles have lost 3 games in a row. The Buccaneers lost on Thursday night to the freaking Atlanta Falcons, who I think is a bottom 5 team in the NFL. Then the 3 wildcard teams. Seattle, big game demons for Sam Darnold. The 6-seeded Niners. How far can you go realistically without Nick Bosa and Fred Warner? And then the 7-seeded Bears, they have to end with a really difficult schedule. I don't think it's crazy to say that they might not make the playoffs. If the Eagles choke down the stretch and the Cowboys win the NFC East, I actually think this is one of Dallas's better chances to make a deep playoff run in a very long time. So I guess that could be a bold take because I think their defense is much improved after the Quinnen Williams trade, and I think their offense is fireworks.
A lot of good ones, and I knew you would have a bunch of good ones, and I'm really glad that I asked you that question because you that was fire right there. I'll give you a couple bold takes.
Love it.
Okay, I think the 49ers go into the Super Bowl, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I think there's 4 teams that they probably can't beat, and those teams I don't think are going to make the playoffs or play the 49ers. I don't know that they can beat Dallas the way the momentum Dallas has rolling on defense right now. I know they own Dallas, but Dallas looks good to me right now.
Their offense would be very hard to stop, too, if you can't get a pass rush.
Right. I mean, and CD, what's, I think Dallas could be a mismatch right now because of Quinn Williams inside. I think, he's that war daddy that they didn't have before. So then Tampa with Baker and those receivers scares me. Goff and the Lions really scare me. I think you're right. One of my bold predictions is the Bears, for all this talk, are going to miss the freaking playoffs. I think the Bears are going to miss the playoffs. I think the Lions are going to get that 7 seed. And then I think the Lions are going to they're going to wind up beating the 2 seed Packers, and they're going to beat the Rams. So I like the Lions to beat go on a little run here and beat the Bears in week 18, and then beat the Packers, and then be the lowest seed and beat the Rams.
Okay.
And in this scenario, I think the Niners would probably go to Philly and then maybe Seattle next. And then would host the NFC Championship game once again against the Lions at Levi's.
Yeah, if they're like the 6th seed, they would host the NFC Championship game.
Right.
How crazy is that? Yeah.
So I think whoever's that 7th seed, Chicago or Detroit, gets Green Bay in the playoffs and then goes and takes on the Rams, and I think takes down the Rams. I think the Niners are going to get to the Super Bowl without having to play the Rams.
And they won't have to travel for it.
Right. So that's what I like there. That would be my bold prediction there. My bold prediction in the AFC is kind of the same as yours. I think Houston's got an ability to get out of that. Defense is so wicked. They're so good. They're on all 3 levels, and they don't even look tired. And they're playing amazing ball. So CJ Stroud is not very good. His line's not very good. His weapons are not very good. I don't think they're very good. But I think Houston is going to upset somebody in the playoffs.
I like that.
I definitely think Houston's going to upset somebody. I still like Drake May in the Patriots, hopefully to void Houston in the first round. Right now they would get them. But I think I like Drake May and the Patriots to go to the Super Bowl. And then my other bold prediction is I think this is the end of the road for John Harbaugh. He's been doing it a while. I just think this is it. I think they're that, he's going to go do something else. That'll be my guess. And then I'll make one other bold prediction is that right now there's a lot of talk about Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore and Ty Simpson. And a lot of talk. I've heard a bunch of draft people say there's going to be 3 quarterbacks going in the first round, and those are the 3 guys. I'll say this. I think Lenore Sellers is going to go in the first round, and I think he's going to outplay all 3 of those guys. So I think Lenore Sellers.
He's got unbelievable talent.
He's there's no way he's not going in the first round. He absolutely is going in the first round. I think he's going in the first half of the first round. And I think he's going to be better than Simpson, Moore, and Mendoza.
I don't think that you can pass up on that type of talent and potential in the first round. I mean, that fits everything that you're looking for in a franchise quarterback. I know that the play has been a little bit inconsistent, but a team is going to look at that skill set and say, we have to take a chance. Have to.
Nobody throws the ball like this guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
this draft class. Yeah.
I mean, there are very few people in the world that can throw the ball like Lenore Sellers.
Yeah.
He can throw the ball 40, 50 yards, and it never gets like 6 feet off the ground. I mean, he's throwing ridiculous lasers. He's also 6'3", 240. I know people have said, hey, there's Anthony Richardson vibes because, he's 6'3", 240, and he's athletic. Anthony Richardson was more of a runner and more of an athlete and less of a quarterback. I think
he also was like a sub. He hovered around 50% completion rate. I know Lenore Sellers, let's see, 65.6% completion rate last year, 60.8 this year. Anthony Richardson was like 55%. It's just awful.
Yeah. Sellers, I don't know where Sellers is going to go, but he's an amazing prospect, and somebody's going to take him in the first round. And I think eventually, and I don't know, do you like Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, or Ty Simpson?
I do. I think Ty Simpson should go back to school. I think that he'd benefit from another year. I always get a little bit scared off of guys who only have like 1 year of experience. And I know that's kind of the case for Mendoza and Dante Moore as well. But I think that Simpson, he would benefit the most out of going back.
All right, time for us to bolt for the door. Let me just say thank you to our sponsor, Habas Law, 1-800-INJURED. They will fight to make it right. We also do our supers right here. We got a couple, so we'll throw them in here just at the end. Here we go. We got Ernberg says, my girlfriend is a Cowboys fan. Am I cooked? 35-14 Tennessee. No, I would say I've seen some amazingly beautiful women in Dallas. My guess is you're overachieving.
It's a good-looking city.
Yeah, it's a good-looking city. And Ernberg, come on. Something tells me you're overachieving. 49er fan, and welcome to the club, by the way. 49er fan says, Chase, were the Eagles interested in Mikell as well? They do love Georgia linemen. Just curious. How good is Nakobe Dean? Thinking of talking to Georgia guys. He's been really good for the Eagles this year.
He's been great.
They are very Georgia-centric. Did they was there any inkling that they may want Mikell?
Not much, just because they were drafting 32, and Mikell Williams wasn't going to last that long in the draft. But I'm sure they had eyes on him. That's for sure.
And not a super, but a great one. When your girlfriend is trying to break up with you, but the Krueger show is on.
That's a real one right there.
That's a good one. Hey, Chase, good to see you, man. Thanks to Habas. Thanks to Sleeper. Thanks to Pig in a Pickle. Thanks to Chase. Thanks to all of you. Shanahan talks in about 45 minutes. I'll go check that out. Then practice. Check me out at 6 o'clock tonight for Niners Nightly. Chase, anything you've got your watch party going on game day? Any content you're putting out later today?
I talked about Ayuk potentially getting dealt to the Commanders. There's a lot of buzz on that front from some NFL insiders, and then the possibility of Saleh getting a head coaching job. So I put that video out kind of right before we went live here on the Krueger Show.